Hello and welcome to the Scoutcast. My name is Joe. I almost forgot my name there. My name is Joe.
It's been a tough week, and my name is Seb.
Yes, indeed. Welcome back, Seb. Just the two of us today. We're going early. I've got a date with Spider-Man in Yeovil later.
Fancy.
And it's COVID chaos, and it's so chaotic. I forgot my name. My beard's fallen off. We don't know what's going on, but we're going to try and make sense of it. Seb, what is coming up on the show?
As you said, we will talk about some of the COVID. Obviously, that's a developing situation, and we're not here to offer advice outside of FPL, but we'll try and let you know what the latest is there and what we're thinking around that. Basically, as of today, because things are changing as we speak. We will, of course, have a quick recap of the game week's just gone. I think there's been two since we last spoke. We're going to have a look at Man City, recent performances, their midfield, because even COVID aside, it's interesting to analyse them. And we know their team has a lot of points in it, so it's how can we get some of those points? We will look at the community team latest, Alex's team. We don't have any differentials, I don't believe, this week. So we will just go straight to Gameweek 18 team reveals for you, if Gameweek 18 ever happens.
Yes, indeed. So we'll just have a quick recap of what we're doing in Game Week, what's been going on in Game Week 17. So there's been postponements. I don't think either of us has managed to get 11 out. We might have done, but not many people have. The average is about 20-something points so far, and we've got one or two matches to go.
I think I've got 11. Not that it matters, because William's got 0. So
I've got 10. I've got no goalkeeper,
Nice.
and Livramento comes off my bench for 0. But yeah, Seb, so what's your score so far, and who have you potentially got to go tonight?
So I am currently on 35, but that's with a -8. The -8 was De Gea to Edison, Gundogan to Jota, so we're seeing if that comes in, and Ronaldo to Watkins. So the pretty popular FPL move from many there. And I have Alexander-Arnold, James, Jota, as mentioned, to go, I believe. Yeah. Oh, Salah captain, obviously. Yeah. Everyone has Salah captain.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing okay, but yeah, I've got 26, -4. But I've got a green arrow. I've gone up about 20,000 places, which is good so far. So that will probably go down because I've only got Salah captain, Alexander-Arnold, Jota, and James, all very well owned. So even if you've got one extra player more, or if you've got some points coming off the bench, that's going to start to overtake people like me. So if I can end with a sort of a grey arrow, small red or a small green arrow, I'll consider myself will have escaped this week. So I took Armstrong out for Dennis, who didn't play, but nevertheless I was fixing a weak link, and Dennis, in theory, if he plays, is a better option. And Ronaldo I removed for Watkins. That was actually my hit. That was the hit bit, and that was because it was looking. Just wasn't going to play, and so Watkins was a player. In an ideal world, I wouldn't have Antonio, I'd have Watkins, and I've had a Bowen ages ago, but that's not an ideal world, and that may be what I look at in the future. So I've got under 5 million in the bank. The world's my oyster, and we'll discuss more later what players like me will do with our extra millions we've got in the bank suddenly. Just before we move on, just want to thank those who have joined us in the live chat. We've got Christian, Matty, Matt, Delia, Pepe, Marilla, Jack, Rommel, Multi-Level, Christian, Andre, and many more. Thanks so much for joining us. Do press that like button, do subscribe if you're not already there, and thanks for joining us on tea time on a Thursday before the final bits of Game Week 17. COVID chaos. I'll put in here. I was going to just go through, we don't have a captaincy video, so I was going to go through some stats but that we usually have on the captaincy video. But I guess with the COVID chaos in mind, all of that will be in the context of that. So what I'm going to put up is the fixtures-ish for Game Week 18. And I'll quickly run through what we know so far, and then I'll ask Seb for his tips on dealing with COVID. So COVID.
Close the laptop and come back in
as an FPL manager. These are the fixtures. Okay, Manchester United versus Brighton. That is off. That doesn't exist anymore. Aston Villa, Burnley is okay as far as we know. Southampton, Brentford, I would say is a doubt. The Brentford manager came out and said 13 members of staff and players are out. Tony should be back, but he might be on his own. So they might not better field anyone. Southampton are fine, we think. Watford, Palace has to be a doubt because of Watford's COVID situation. West Ham Norwich has to be a doubt because of Norwich's COVID situation. Leeds Arsenal, okay, as far as we know. Leeds and Liverpool, I don't know whether they're the most vaccinated clubs, but they certainly seem to be okay. Everton Leicester has to be a doubt because of Leicester. Wolves Chelsea, there's some cases emerging at Chelsea, so that could be a doubt. Newcastle.
Yeah, we think tonight's match goes ahead,
yes,
but we wonder if that will develop over time.
Okay.
We're recording this at about 5 p.m. on Wednesday, so a couple of hours until the Chelsea match,
Yeah.
but it does sound like there are a few cases there.
Definitely. Newcastle City, we think is okay. And Spurs Liverpool has to be a doubt because of Spurs, not necessarily because of Liverpool.
I realise I just said Wednesday. It's Thursday. It's definitely Thursday.
It is Thursday. I think it is. But yeah, I know. It's hard to tell the days of the week, especially with these midweek matches and working out the game week. It is game week 18 coming up, I hope. So therefore, for me, that leaves me with potentially 4 players. Okay. So I will have to take a hit. I won't have a goalkeeper, definitely, because I've got the Brentford goalkeeper at the moment. So that's what I'm doing, really. We don't know whether things are going to happen. In the meantime, I'm going to fix my squad. Fix weak links. What is my weakest links? Well, it was Armstrong at Southampton. Rotation risk. Southampton not in great form. I swapped him for Dennis. In theory, better chip. Fernandes is a terrible goalkeeper. De Gea, better. Ramsdale, even better. So I think I'll be looking at that move. Sissoko, do I really want a 4
Would you really get Ramsdale over De Gea at this point?
Yeah. I just
Really?
think there was an interesting post today on Twitter, and forgive me, whoever it was who posted, I can't remember, but they were basically saying every season a 4.5 goalkeeper emerges. Now I didn't get him for 4.5. I won't get Ramsdale for 4.5, obviously, but it's the nature of it. A cheap goalkeeper will emerge, and they will just simply get the saves, the clean sheets, the bonus points. They will just emerge like Nick Pope, like back in my day. Schwarzer. these goalkeepers are great.
Does that mean he's going to keep doing it though? Like, I totally hear you, right? Getting the 4.5 million goalkeeper, the flavour of the season, is definitely a great thing to be able to do. But I mean, obviously, if Man United are missing him, I did De Gea to Edison because I thought they would miss too. So if Man United aren't playing, fair enough. But all else being equal, I would say that their defences have been equally bad, give or take, so far. De Gea, off the top of my head, has much better shot-stopping numbers than Ramsdale, and Man United have the better fixtures. I would say De Gea.
I think he could be. I might end up getting both. I think we might need 2 very good playing goalkeepers as it stands. But yeah, I do. And in an ideal world, I would look at De Gea long-term because there's doubles coming up, great run of fixtures. But I do like Ramsdale. I like him a lot. I think they are both good options, and that's what I'm looking at, really. I've got the money to afford 2 good options.
I mean, I get the attraction of, like, you know, he's scored great points so far. I understand the wanting in on that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not looking at any other goalkeepers. Edison, possibly. I know you went for him. Obviously, the City defence is good, but he is at that marginally a bit more money. And I do not rule out. I've got Cancelo. I do not rule out getting 2 Man City midfielders. But I can't see myself getting much more than 3 Arsenal players. I've got Tomiyasu already, Ramsdale, and a Saka, a Smith Rowe. I can't see myself getting more. Same with Manchester United. De Gea, Ronaldo, a midfielder, a defender. I can see myself getting as well, but I can't see myself getting more. But I've already got Cancelo, so. For Manchester City, I don't want to lock myself out of getting a Foden and a KDB or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair enough. On the wildcard, I had Foden and Gundogan, and then have changed that to... And Cancelo, obviously.
Yeah.
I've changed that to Foden, Cancelo and Edison.
Yeah.
The thinking was... I mean, I wanted Jota, and obviously I needed to make that work without too many transfers, so I did Gundogan. We thought Gundogan might not play midweek. He then came on and got 2 sideways pass assists, although did miss a great chance, so fair enough. So I was happy to lose him, brought in Jota because him versus Newcastle terrified me, basically. And the original plan was always to get Jota back in a couple of game weeks, so by this weekend anyway. So, and then the thought was just, well, if I want to get in on that City and I need to replace De Gea, which I thought he would miss 2 matches, I thought Edison was a good shout. And I was looking at, if we say Edison will score, say his usual amount of points, give or take, which is like 150 to 160. Now, the only City midfielders who ever score more than that are Amares with like 175 a couple of years ago. KDB obviously could smash it, but that's a very different conversation because prices. Bernardo, Gundogan, Foden, they'd all need to play most of the season to get close to that number of points. So I thought Edison was actually a better way to get involved in those points.
It is true, but also with a goalkeeper, I'd be looking to get them long term. But with these midfielders, we chop and change these guys, obviously. Sure. I just wanted to thank FPL Prem Tipster, who points out there was FPL Editor that posted the goalkeeper thread. Thanks so much to both of you there. FPL Prem Tipster for pointing that out, and FPL Editor for highlighting that. It was very good. And Ramsdale definitely my top choice at the moment in the absence of De Gea for a goalkeeper. So that's my strategy. I'm just looking at my squad and thinking, well, who is a weak link? And I'll just use that time. I don't know who's going to play. I don't know what matches are going to be postponed. They're having these tests like the day of the match. So this is why we're getting these late postponements. That could happen to... I mean, I say Manchester City, Newcastle seems okay. They could all get a bunch of negative tests and then that could be cancelled. We don't know. So in the absence of that, I've just got to fix what I can. So that's my strategy. What sort of thing are you looking at, Seb, to cope with this chaos?
In terms of specifics, I'm not really sure. I am happy to wait and see, which is probably not a massively helpful answer here, but I think it's truthful and I think it's what many will be doing. There is a very long time, even though it's only about 48 hours, until the next set of matches, and so much can happen. So while often, I like trying to look at price changes or anything like that, I will be very much in the camp of last-minute transfers and don't worry about prices at the moment. Ideally, I'd kind of like to do nothing. Like if I can get, a whole team or enough of a team out, I've just wildcarded, which maybe has been a bit of a waste now, unfortunately. I just took a -8. I have a team I'm happy with. I would love to just roll. Yeah. Of course, if I roll and then things get called off and we're given a wild card, I'll lose a transfer. But those are kind of unknowns and there's some strategy to be played there. But like I say, I'm just going to chill for a moment or two. For me, the thing that interests me most on the strategy side is, I think it was Simon, FPL Analytics, who posted on Twitter earlier, a hypothetical question of if everything in FPL was exactly the same as it is now, but every single week, half the matches were randomly removed from the calendar and you got 0 points for those matches. But you knew ahead what those matches were going to be just before the deadline. So say, only every week you found out what they were going to be. Does that make FPL as a game more skillful or less skillful? So more reliant on luck? So, I mean, the answer to that, we don't know. I think, intuition, you can take either way. I would argue that it depends on how far ahead you can plan, and because you only know one game week in advance, maybe it goes a bit more to luck than skill because there's a greater impact of variance and you maybe can't add that cumulative effect of planning for fixtures. But whichever way you fall on that, it led me to thinking that the obvious advice, the thing that comes to your mind immediately during this period is we should get 15, a squad of 15 strong players from as many teams as possible to cover all our bases. And I think that makes sense until you examine why you're trying to do that, which is you're effectively trying to minimize your losses. So it's loss aversion. You're going, I don't want to miss any players from any matches. I want to minimize how many things I'll get affected by COVID. But I wonder, and I haven't worked this out, and I'd be fascinated if anyone did, especially if my suggestion is wrong, that's also really interesting. But if you actually went in the opposite direction and went, you know what, matches are going to be called off and I can't control which those matches are going to be. What I can control is how good my team is. So say I tripled up on Liverpool, City, whoever the good players, good value are, and I went hard in the other direction and had 15 players, only 11 of which are, worth money, 3 on the bench who cost very little, get 90 minutes, of course, but only get me 2 points. And even double down on Liverpool, City, because when they play, they will return points. And I wonder if you could maximize your gains as opposed to minimize your losses and come out ahead. Yeah. Now, I don't know the answer, but I think it's interesting to think about and interesting to fight against that instinct to go, I must run away from this. I must minimize my losses. I must get lots of players. Because I wonder if that isn't necessarily the answer.
I think like with all things, it's somewhere in the middle. It's a balance. But I do agree with that, because you can have 7 players and they could be Ollie Watkins, they could be Liverpool players, they could be the City midfielders. And you could come out with a huge score and a massive rank gain, or you could have 11 players and you're fielding some 1s and 2s and things like that, and some cheaper players. So I think it's a balance. We are dealing with luck in for example, there are lots of people. I was tempted to get Dennis and King for Watford I mean, 2 form strikers, but that would have left me with none, especially if the other one was Ronaldo. That would have left me with no strikers. But that's just the luck of the draw. There's no skill in that. But at the same time, I think I'm slightly wary of putting my eggs in too much of a basket, like tripling up too much on a team. I don't rule it out at some point this season, but at the moment I'm slightly wary of that. And I'm also wary of players I've got that are 2-pointers. So your Livramentos, Sissoko in my case. And I would like to beef that up, like with your point there that you were making, Seb. With so for example, Foden, Silva, Gundogan, these are the sorts of players that are on my list there because they can get me a double-digit return. But Sissoko is not going to get me a double-digit return ever. Especially not with a postponement. But he's certainly not going to get that. So that's what I'm looking at. Is probably a little bit of what you're saying, and a little bit of looking at my team and thinking, well, I don't necessarily need a full 15, but I need a better team to deal with this.
I mean, as so much is the case in life, the answer is probably somewhere in the middle, which is very boring. Yeah, but for me, as ever in FPL, we're looking for the best value players and then the highest impact players. Yeah. So someone like, I don't know, Ronaldo isn't necessarily good value, but because diminishing returns are a thing, and if you go for value, you end up with about 20 million left, and you need captains. We go for Ronaldo, and then we look for value, say a Foden or someone like that. So it's probably not that different to usual in terms of strategy, which is a very boring answer. The one thing I would say is still get a cheapish bench. I'm still a fan of a cheap bench. I have the cheapest you can get plus king, basically. But I would say get minutes on your bench. You do just want minutes, because if you can get a 4.5 who gets 2 points versus a 4.5 who gets 0, that's worth it.
We our community team that we're running on behalf of Alex is Douglas Luiz. He's his 4.5 guy. Some people have Ramsey, who got 7, 8, 10.
That was
10
a really
points.
Nice shout. Yeah.
So at least with our community team there, we got 3 points off the bench there. For me, that position is Sissoko didn't play. So yeah, I can see there. There's definitely that balance there, and I think I know as a journalist, the reality of things that you write about is somewhere boring in the middle. But what people like to read about and what journalists like to write about is the extreme. And I definitely have this opinion about this thing. That's that far.
The takeaway from this is Seb says get 4 premiums.
Yeah, well that could be it. But yeah,
I'd love to just a question in the chat. I'd love to address. Which is kind of relevant. Michael asks, if you only have one free transfer, any thoughts on how much of a hit you should take to make things work? Now, my answer for this, and I'll come to you in a sec, is treat each transfer, including hits, as their own isolated event. Now, of course, they are linked, and you want to make sure that if you're taking a hit to get another player, of course, you might be taking it's a -8 or nothing because you're trying to afford a player. But realistically, with matches being called off all over the place, if you decide to do a transfer and then you get some new information, a match being called off, don't fall into the sunk cost fallacy, I think, which is, oh, well, I'm already down for a -4. That's bad. I shouldn't make further mistakes. I shouldn't compound that, because it's an isolated decision. Each transfer is worth it on its own merits or not. They're not linked. Of course, on the flip side, you also don't want to go, well, I've taken a -8, I might as well take a -20. The thing I'm trying to get across is, they're each their own decision.
Yeah, I mean, I had that decision with Ronaldo. Ronaldo, great player. I removed him for Watkins, which worked out this week, and it may not work out long term, but it definitely it's worked out so far. And I think it will short term. But one of the reasons I did that is I looked at that and I thought, okay, I know we're talking about quality and not necessarily quantity, but Ronaldo is a slight exception because he is so expensive. For example, so is Kane or Mane. These are the big guns, and I thought he is so expensive. I really can use that money better, I think, at the moment, and so I can beef up some of those areas. And that's just a specific of this time. Ronaldo is not the man of the moment for me.
I would count that, I guess, as the same decision, because there what you're saying is like, I need to downgrade to upgrade elsewhere. So while it's 2 transfers, it's 1 decision. So that's fine.
Exactly.
Say then, for example, another match is called off. You shouldn't go, oh no, I've already taken a hit, so I shouldn't take another. It's a brand new set of decisions. Yeah,
definitely. And so my next decision, say for example, making Sissoko a better player. That's an isolate. It's in its own. That's going to pay off. Upgrading the Brentford goalkeeper, who possibly won't play anyway, to Ramsdale, who's the best goalkeeper in the game at the moment. that's gonna work out. But anyway, let's move on. So I've got some stats here. This is the last 4 matches, which is we usually have in the captaincy video. So I've just sort of rattled through these, and this will give some idea. This is of use for. I don't want to. This is of use for this weekend. If all the matches get cancelled and we have a break, this is of use. Go back to this episode, and this is of use whenever we return. So this is currently who is the form players here, and see if they can carry on their form through the break or towards this weekend. So this is in terms of expected goal involvement. It's Jota who is top there, and then Salah, Ronaldo, Calvert-Lewin. So this is what I've done. I've sorted by last 4 matches before people say not everyone's played the same amount of games. I know that. But what this does is it shows who is in their last 4 matches. So remember Calvert-Lewin, he was good. He's going to return from injury at some point soon. He is a great asset. Raheem Sterling, very quietly. Saw he was in a few people's teams this week. Disappointed that he was on the bench. But he has been a great asset for City in recent weeks. Firmino, remember him? He could be back. Well, he could even be back tonight for Liverpool. Jorginho. The expected goal is obviously through penalties there. But I don't get all this non-penalty XG business. You can't take away penalties from people like Jorginho. I mean, that's their value.
So the reason we do that, you're completely right.
Yeah.
The reason we do it is obviously just the predictability. So you can't predict when a penalty is going to occur. What you can do is go, well, so-and-so is getting into good positions, getting good chances, that is likely to continue or not continue. So it's kind of the penalty award is kind of a random event. If you took the whole season, yeah, fair enough. Yeah. But if you're looking at, say, the next 4 matches, you don't know if Jorginho is going to get 1 penalty, no penalties, or 4 penalties.
What I do like about the likes of Jorginho, the penalty taker, for example, Ronaldo at the moment for Manchester United, basically the penalty taker for good teams that get fouled a lot in the box is a good bet anyway. And I remember investing in Gerrard when he was sort of waning as a player. You know, what wasn't the great Gerrard, but there was that particular season where he got something like 10, 11 penalties. It's a ridiculous amount of penalties. And James Milner as well. So there is value for these players.
I guess the thing with Jorginho is you might want 3 Chelsea. But the famous example for me is Milivojevic from Crystal Palace, because you didn't want 3 Palace, so it was fine to take up a spot.
Yeah.
And I think Zaha, was winning quite a few penalties. He was also on like corners, other set pieces. So while he did nothing in open play, every time there was a set piece, you were like, cool, I'm in here for 5 million or something.
He was great. It was a great asset. I remember getting him for a double game week when he did well as well. So Gundogan, who is on penalties, I believe, as well. Tielemans, who is on penalties as well. And Neil Maupay, who is the exponent of the 97th minute goal. Sadly, he wasn't there last night for Brighton against Wolves, so they lost. There was just answer one quick question about Calvert-Lewin here. FPL Gaza, problem with Calvert-Lewin is Everton. Perhaps the problem with Everton is no Calvert-Lewin, and so him coming back. Touché. So we wait and see. Anyway, he is a good striker. and he has been, and I'm sure other metrics will prove that. Let's have a look at the whipping boys. We'll also look at this in the captaincy video. This look at the defence's 2 target, and this is Watford, Leicester, Leeds and Newcastle, and Wolves are also nestling in there. Although they've only conceded a couple of goals, they've expected to concede a whole bunch more. So looking at that, we're looking at which teams they've got here. So I've got in very small writing next to them, these are the teams that are playing them. So if they're all going ahead, which they may or may not be. So Watford's next 4, Crystal Palace, Wolves, West Ham and Tottenham, which would indicate that Gallagher might get some joy there. So those who have him. Wolves, maybe. West Ham, do we trust Antonio still? But it's also Bowen as well. And then Tottenham, so that could be the time. I've got my eye on Son really for around about then. But Leicester have got Everton, City and Liverpool, so that highlights that City and Liverpool assets could do well. And then Norwich, so if you've got Pookie, you never know. Leeds, Arsenal, so Arsenal are good. They're looking quite good at the moment, so could do well against Leeds. Liverpool and then Villa and Burnley, so just highlights their attacking options to target there. And Newcastle have got City and Manchester United next, so highlights how good an option getting a Manchester City player is in as well as a Manchester United player. Everton play there, so maybe Calvert-Lewin will be back for that. And then Southampton play there, so hard to tell who's going to play in attack there. But I don't know, looking at this last 4 matches for these so-called whipping boys, whenever they start, really. I mean, do you hold with that sort of target attackers playing these types of defences?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'd go for fixtures massive. I've still got Antonio, for example, because I'm a stupid person. But yeah, fixtures are a big thing for me. I think obviously the only thing to keep in mind here is this is just the last 4 matches. So, for example, Leeds have just played City.
Yeah.
Although actually we only conceded about 2 XG in that, despite conceding 7. Although 2 XG is a lot. And I think Wolves have played City too, which is probably why they're higher than they have been for the rest of their season. So, of course, you want to look at who these people have played. But then that also is informative because, for example, Leicester have Man City coming up and Newcastle. Is it Newcastle? Newcastle have Man City coming up. So good time to target.
Exactly.
Obviously have Man City's attackers. But, we know they've got some of the worst defences against those types of teams, at least, coming up as well. Yeah,
definitely. So, it highlights, once again, Man City. And we are going to talk about Man City in a sec. And the final one is sometimes I put up on the Scoutcast as well as captaincies, the goals imminent. So these are the under-the-radar picks. Once again, last 4 matches, because they all haven't played the same. So to be fair to them. So Aubameyang's at the top, out of favour, to put it mildly. He's pretty much getting kicked out of Arsenal. And that's going to... Yeah, Kane, the Unicane. I don't think he's played since we were trumping him up as an asset. But yeah, he's fallen out of favour. But the next ones, these are highlighting players that might fall under the radar because they perhaps haven't been scoring lots of goals. They might have been involved in goals, but not scoring lots of goals. So you might not have noticed them so much. But Gundogan came in. Jesus, if he can play, he could score. Mane. I think we had someone in the chat saying that Mane wasn't on the last 4 expected goal involvement table, but in terms of sort of under the radar goal scorers, Mane is a one there. Werner doing well at Chelsea. Pogba, I don't think all the signs seem to be that Pogba's not going to play. Rashika at Norwich is there. Grealish, we will perhaps mention him in a sec with Man City options. And Martinelli, I understand that Az got Martinelli in, so well done getting him in there. He scored. I think we had a question here actually. It was Conrad asked best 6 million midfielder or less. Well, there we go. Martinelli could be a good option there.
Is it basically only Martinelli and Mbeumo, who everyone now hates, that are kind of viable under 6 million off the top of my head?
I think
Martinelli's per 90s are really nice. You just need him to actually get the 90s.
Yes. Well, I think with Aubameyang out, you got Lacazette and Martinelli is playing in an attacking role along with Saka and Odegaard, and it's Smith Rowe's coming on later. So would it be Smith Rowe comes on for Odegaard if Odegaard needs a rest? Is Martinelli nailed on now? I think he'll come on. We saw with Smith Rowe. I think these cheap Arsenal midfielders are great. If they don't start, doesn't matter. Last half an hour could get you a return. But yeah, Martinelli, good call. Man City, these are a team I'm very interested in, whether they play this weekend or whether they play in 4 weeks' time, whatever. But I'm very interested in them. So Seb, do you want to take us through the Man City chat?
Absolutely. So I think the video is a little bit behind. So what's the first thing you have for me here, and I will order it appropriately. Right.
Well, the first thing, I've just got a picture of Phil Foden up.
Oh, lovely.
to introduce the chat.
Poster boy.
And it will help me when I get around to doing the timestamps tomorrow.
Okay. So so obviously, we don't know if teams will be playing matches over the next little while, but hopefully this is still valid whenever they do come back. And we've talked about City a lot recently, so I just wanted to look at a few different things. We've done the Bernardo Gundogan chat to death. I think people know everyone's feelings on that, and we'll see what happens. But I think there's some interesting things to look at about how City are lining up when KDB is back, for example, which is probably the big thing here.
Okay.
So if you have that first, that's what I'd love to.
So which one is? I've got some heat maps of Man City against Wolves or Man City against Leeds.
If we bring up Man City versus Wolves, this is before KDB, so he didn't start this match.
Okay. So what have we got here?
Sure, I will just grab it up for myself and I can talk through it. So we had Cancelo playing right back in this match, which is obviously unusual for him this season. He's been mostly left back. In the past, he shared those 2 roles with Kyle Walker out ill, I believe. So Zinchenko played left back. And you can see there, firstly, for the fullbacks, what they're doing. Obviously, they come high, they come inside. Cancelo had the most touches in that match, and he had more than Gundogan and Bernardo Silva combined, which is crazy. But you can see how he's really holding almost that inside playmaker role. It's almost like he's playing right centre mid. Zinchenko doing a bit of the similar on the other side, but it also depends where other people are playing. Because we know
those listening to the podcast version, the Cancelo's heat map, he is red hot and near the penalty box. That's what you need to know. Very hot, very near the penalty box.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Sorry, I forgot. Yeah, please do jump in and illustrate any of that orderly for us. Orderly, that's not a word. And yes, so Zinchenko doing a similar thing on the other side, but not quite to the same degree. And obviously, we know as well with Pep, he wants his left footer over there. So if Foden's out there or Zinchenko, interestingly, going forward, it's interesting to watch if Zinchenko almost counts as the left footer on the outside, because depending on who's ahead of him, he does come inside himself. So we might also want a Foden out there. We know against Leeds, Foden played 9. Against Wolves, he played on the left with Grealish at 9. So maybe he wants 2 out there if it's Zinchenko. But the ones to look at again here are Gundogan and Bernardo Silva. So we know they played not the entire match each. Gundogan on that left-hand side, having touches quite deep. He did have that header cleared off the line, but did very little. Otherwise, he was very deep and he was subbed off with a bit of an injury. We know Bernardo actually looks quite advanced there, almost a bit of a winger in some ways. But off the ball, which what this doesn't show, because these are touch maps, he was almost playing as a 9 alongside the other 9 out of possession, looking for space. Whether that was to receive the ball himself or to create space for others, we don't know, but it's an encouraging sign. But the interesting thing is to see how that then develops when KDB is back against Leeds.
So before I do that, just to reiterate, but Bernardo Silva is really near. He's not as hot as Cancelo down that wing, but he is very, very, very close to goal. Whereas Gundogan is not. Gundogan's sort of in an advanced over the halfway line sort of role, and you can tell he's presumably passing a lot from there. So that's the position there. So let's move on to some heat maps against Leeds and see how Kevin De Bruyne affected things.
So the one caveat here, of course, is Leeds were poor, so City were allowed to do what they wanted. Zinchenko, firstly, who has a similar shape to what he had in the previous match on the left-hand side, relatively high, but considerably fewer touches. It's a lot less hot, and it's a little bit wider as well. There's not as much in the middle, which I'll come back to in a second. John Stones played right back, although there was a bit of tucking in and whatnot there, but he basically is invisible compared to Cancelo. Similar areas of the pitch, but just so many fewer touches. When Cancelo isn't playing, they effectively lose a playmaker from that line of phase of play. Rodri actually ended up doing an awful lot of that, who isn't included in these images. He got very far forward, almost got a goal himself, but I think that might have been a bit of the old why Scott McTominay is good against Leeds as well, because we just don't deal with people running well from deep. The interesting ones then again here are Bernardo Silva, Gundogan and De Bruyne. So again, Bernardo Silva and Gundogan didn't play the whole match. They shared some minutes. But this time, Bernardo started at left centre mid to accommodate Kevin De Bruyne at right centre mid, which is the opposite of where he's been playing before. And on the previous heat map, we saw when he was right centre mid, he was very high, very attacking, getting into good positions, even off the ball. This time, when he was at left centre mid, and the touch map here is, what would you say, Joe? A lot lighter and a lot deeper, like worse than Gundogan's from the one before.
What, Silva? Yes. He's basically he's sort of Gundogan light on the left and light, and not near the penalty box. A little bit, but not as much as before. Yeah, and much lighter there. He's not really involved.
Absolutely. And then when Gundogan comes on, similar sort of amount of touches, again, only half a match, but a little more central, a little further forward, not really like either of the previous matches, but he came on at left centre mid, and then there was a bit of juggling around as well. But the one to really call out is KDB. Now, he was notionally playing right centre mid, but this looks like the heat map of a number 10, wouldn't you say? Yeah,
definitely. So Gundogan is lighter, but getting nearer and more central into that penalty box. De Bruyne, though, that's the interesting one. He's looking red hot.
So I would say that's a better heat map than we saw from even Bernardo from that same right centre mid position. Now, of course, it's Leeds. We were poor, so De Bruyne was allowed to do what he wanted a bit more. But again, off the ball, and when Leeds took goal kicks, it was notable to see De Bruyne literally standing up front with Foden. Like, it was a 4-4-2 almost. Bernardo wasn't even doing that in the previous match, although he was up front off the ball. De Bruyne was either allowed by Leeds to do whatever he wanted, or tactically, and I think this is the interesting takeaway, when City have all of their options available, and of course Cancelo needs to come back into this too, but if he plays left back, I think this really builds into this. The right centre mid is the one that is allowed to attack, do what they want, get really far forward, really impose themselves on that side of the pitch. Because on the other side, you have Cancelo, and you have a Gundogan or a Bernardo Silva who have to drop a little deeper. And in terms of the way City play outside of FPL, it's maybe more of the David Silva, control the ball, rotate it, a brilliant thing that they definitely need in their side. But for FPL, it's the right centre mid that really looks dangerous.
Okay.
If Kevin De Bruyne has that position locked down, and I think he does, that really hurts Gundogan and Bernardo Silva. And it probably hurts Bernardo Silva more than Gundogan based on this extremely limited sample. Of course, De Bruyne might only play every other match, in which case you want Bernardo to be taking that right centre mid role. That is where he is best. So far, he's played all the minutes available. And so he could go right wing, he could play right centre mid. He could even play false nine. So maybe you'll get some minutes out of him. But the last thing just on this idea of where people will play is, I think it was Libero who mentioned this to me on Twitter about this. So this isn't something I found. But Pep really does try and manage the minutes of his players. And over previous seasons, very, very roughly, in all competitions, the midfielders we're talking about here will get about 3,500 minutes. And I think we've seen in the past with Gundogan, when he started approaching that number, he was then rested for a bit. Now, Pep does pick on merit as well, and, Bernardo was really there on merit. So, of course, he might exceed the expected amount. But so far, he has like twice the amount of minutes as some of his competitors in Foden, De Bruyne, obviously because of injury. So there is every chance going forward, he will have them withdrawn a little bit from him, just that he remains fresh into the end of the season. Maybe something to keep an eye on.
Well, I mean, there's two things I look at. Looking at these heat maps here, obviously no Cancelo because he was suspended. So how do you think Cancelo would? So for example, say De Bruyne is available and plays, and Cancelo plays as well, and Silva. How would Cancelo impact on, say, De Bruyne or Silva?
So obviously a bit situational dependent, assuming fitness. We would assume Cancelo was left back mostly this season with Kyle Walker right back. Kyle Walker is going to do more of a John Stones thing here. He does get more of the ball. He gets a bit further forward, but he's not really there to attack. It's Cancelo that will bring the ball forward. He got 140 touches against Wolves, whereas Gundogan got about 70 and Bernardo Silva 40. It was crazy. He will play as that playmaker in that like left centre mid almost role himself.
Right.
Assuming there's a left footer like Foden to go wide, and that's a separate conversation. And then De Bruyne will take that right centre mid playmaker, getting forward, of course. So I think when everyone is fit, Cancelo on the left, and we know we love him from FPL, KDB on the right, and that leaves one spot for another person in centre mid. And I think Gundogan's better at that role, but Bernardo is obviously been more impactful for FPL. So I'm not going to try and call it, but I think it's something to keep an eye on. And I mean, ultimately for me, I'm going to say I think this means Foden is the pick, because the one player we haven't mentioned here, because he is not affected by what we're talking about, is Foden.
Right.
Foden will play 9 or he will play left wing.
Okay.
And KDB doesn't touch him. It doesn't matter.
Right, yeah. So Foden is untouchable in terms of personnel, you would say, but he could be what's the opposite of untouchable? I was going to say touchable, but Foden could be rotated based on just his own personal fitness and minutes.
So other people have, Luke from Fantasy Football Scout obviously done some great work on this. We know Pep does pick on merit, maybe more than we think. Of course he rotates, but if you play well, you often keep your spot. Foden's been brilliant when he's been fit this season. And I actually think he's been better at left wing in terms of real life football than he has been up front. From FPL, of course, we'd rather he was up front. But he has those two positions, I'd say his first choice in either. So whether they need a left footer or not, and Grealish maybe will play the other role, or maybe Sterling, I don't think his minutes are affected by the other players, other than him maybe needing a rest, but everyone will get their rest at some point.
So someone like me, who doesn't have a Man City midfielder, or perhaps I already have one and looking to get another one, the best Man City midfielder to get at the moment would be ...
Well, so I guess this is kind of why I've gone Ederson, Cancelo and Foden. So Foden is the best one for me.
Yeah.
Cancelo everyone has and probably should have. And then it's what do you do with the third spot? So I went Ederson. I did have Gundogan originally because his stats are better. And I thought, as we've seen here, if the left centre mid slot is the one available, he is better there than Bernardo. But Bernardo has false 9 available to him. He has right wing available to him. And he's been brilliant this season. It doesn't matter what the stats say. He scored the points. He's got those in the bank. And his stats have actually looked better in the last few. He might really become a real option stats-wise as well.
Yeah, it's just the
so
basics.
I don't mind between those two, which is kind of why I went for the extra defender.
I mean, he's getting the minutes in an attacking side, so higher chance of being involved at some point.
And just on the minutes, the thing to keep in mind is if Pep does have this amount of minutes he allocates players, Bernardo is massively overrunning those minutes at the moment. but maybe that's because he's so important. So I think I'll wait and see on that.
Okay. Now I have two other Man City slides. I've got just one. The last two matches, just positions. Do you want me to put that one up?
Yeah, please. I think it's just a nice conclusion to what we've.
It's just got lots of numbers on here. So these are actually players, and this is their numbers. So yeah, what is this showing us?
Sure. Just let me grab it up 1 second, my friend. So we have. I've lost it. So what we have here is the average positions from the Scouts members area. On the left, I believe, we have Leeds, and on the right, Wolves. And the position, we'll go with Wolves first. For people listening, is probably more what you would expect. It looks a bit like that Man City formation. You've got the front three, you've got the midfield, you've got the wing backs pushing really high up, 2 centre backs dropping, and Rodri, number 16, kind of holding. That's probably what we'd expect to see from City more often than not. And it highlights, how on the right, Sterling there is staying wider, whereas on the left, people tuck in. And we know that with, your Grealish or Foden, whoever's playing there, they're going to maybe come inside a bit. Foden, we know for the width, but Grealish will pretty much stay in that same slot. The interesting thing on the other side with the Leeds, just to touch on Grealish, is despite him playing number 9 notionally in one match and left wing in the other, he actually basically played in the exact same position on the pitch. So it kind of doesn't matter, which shows how, he's going to play that role and how he's not suited to creating width. The real interesting thing to call out, though, is against Leeds, which is on the left-hand side. It's almost a 4-1-5.
Yeah,
there is just Mahrez, De Bruyne, Foden. I think that was Bernardo and Grealish.
For those listening to the podcast, we're looking at a picture of Leeds players, and there's 5 up front. There's literally, it's an Aussie Ardiles style 5-man attack going on.
There is no actual central striker, but there are just 5 attacking mids.
Just 5 forwards, and. That would indicate against a team we've been talking about the so-called whipping boys, the likes of Leeds, Newcastle, Leicester, arguably. They're all just getting in on the act at the top. There is room within this Man City formation for a 5-man attack.
Absolutely. And I think what it does highlight nicely as well is, again, the other images we had a minute ago in the conversation highlights this more specifically, but just as general team shape. Now, Leeds probably allowed that front 5. That is circumstantial rather than a tactic, I think. And you can see that by how much further Rodri is further forward as well. Like, he didn't need to sit back. He could come and attack too. But the interesting things to note are your Gundogan, are your Bernardo Silva in there, and how, as we saw in the other one, Gundogan probably played this role a lot more effectively than Bernardo and was a little further forward. So if this is the shape we're expecting City to hold going forwards, I think, again, it highlights Foden is the one. If you can call the right winger, that might be interesting. Sterling, Jesus, Mahrez. Grealish actually has decent numbers, but he plays the same role no matter what, and he hasn't really returned the points so far. And then between Gundogan and Bernardo, I'll just repeat myself. We need to see what's going to happen. Yeah. I would back Gundogan based on how it's evolving, but Bernardo is going to get in this team, and he is performing brilliantly.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I had a wild card now, I would be looking at Cancelo, Foden, and Gundogan, and just see where I go with it. That might change over time as more information comes in, but it would be those 3 because I think I will get the minutes and I think I'll get attacking returns out of them. But it is tough to call. I've got another slide here. This is the 21-22 season so far. This is expected goal involvement. So, and this is who's expected to be involved in most goals. So yeah, who is top of this one? If it's up on your screen yet.
Oh, you take us away, Joe, and I will grab it in a second.
Oh, okay. So Gundogan is top. It costs 7.3. He's expected to have been involved in well over 7 goals. Then you're looking at Sterling. Once again, nearly 7 goals. Then Silva, Grealish, Foden, Jesus, Mahrez, and Cancelo. All of them expected to be involved in more than 5 goals or more. So they're all very involved. And it highlights what we just shown there. They're all, basically everyone is getting in on the act of trying to attack in this City side. So you really want to be. I feel naked just with Cancelo. I feel like I'm going into a City game with just wearing a small toga, and I want to be wearing a massive parka from the House of Foden. But yeah, I want some of these players here, and it shows how involved they'd be there. And De Bruyne's but low down, but that's based on largely on minutes there. So that could be we could be looking at De Bruyne moving up a bit.
Yeah, the interesting one to call out here is minutes, because Bernardo is decent here, but he has had superior minutes. In terms of per 90, Bernardo is one of the worst players on this list. But if you think he's going to keep getting the minutes, then this list is more important.
Exactly.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
The other interesting one to call out with this list is when we compare to previous seasons. We spoke about this before. Gundogan is basically performing better than he's ever performed, despite being poor in the last match but one. So that idea of, is Bernardo doing a Gundogan? I would argue is Gundogan doing a Gundogan, and then even more so.
Yeah, definitely. So, lots to chew over. People like me without City midfield coverage and willing to take hits. We've got lots of options here, but Foden is my top choice at the moment. Gundogan is sort of second.
I think everyone should have Foden and Cancelo, and then you add a third one to it. The reason I chose Ederson is I think I explained before just about some team structure, and I want a goalkeeper just for the rest of the season now.
Yeah.
But why I think he's also not terrible in his own right is at a similar price, or a bit cheaper obviously than some of these midfielders, but relative value of goalkeepers, he's kind of more expensive than these midfielders, is I reckon he could deliver 160 points this year.
Yeah.
If you take minutes into account, almost none of these players ever deliver 160. So De Bruyne, of course, can smash that. And if any of these play 3,800 or so minutes, whatever it is in a season, they'd probably smash it too.
Yeah.
But they never do. And if you look at their previous returns, it's only Mahrez who's getting the 170s. A great season from Gundogan was still 150 or something like that. So if Ederson's playing every week, I'll take my 160 from him.
Yeah, and I think, around about this time last year, I got Ederson in as my goalkeeper, and he was great, and I kept him for weeks and weeks. And
I'm a year behind the curve.
No, he was really good, and it was a different setup. We were in a different world then. But I think you cannot go wrong getting Ederson in. So definitely. We've got some community questions, but I think we pretty much answered them. So I'll just read them out just to recognise that they took some time to ask us some questions. Andy Penman, what is the right approach to Man City mids? Avoid, gamble on one, stick, hop around. Well, I would just say try not to hop around, because the one you get out for the one you get in is you're just forever gonna miss points. I would just unless they're injured, just get one, get two, and just stick with them, because they're going to get you points at some point.
We saw a brilliant example of that this week with Bernardo and Gundogan.
Yeah, exactly.
They swapped halves and they swapped points.
Yeah. Summit asked double up on Bernardo, Foden, or just one. Well, as we were saying, Foden, Gundogan maybe. And Lamella, is Jack Grealish an option? So I think in comparison to the others, perhaps not. But having said that, he is an attacking role for arguably the most attacking side.
I think he's probably just fourth on the list. And it's hard to recommend him because he hasn't got the points so far, which is a very silly bias to have because the numbers look okay. But hey, look, we do know he needs to convert, and we want that reassurance from him earning points so far. Yeah. I think the real interesting thing for me is it's that right centre mid role that is pivotal.
Yeah.
In the last couple of matches, we've seen two different players play that role basically as a second nine half the time. If that continues, that, aside from Foden, that is the midfielder you want. If it's De Bruyne, unfortunately, he's probably a bit too expensive. If it's Bernardo Silva, and this is where, despite his numbers for the whole season being very poor, in the last 4 or 5, I think, his numbers have been really good, actually, up there with Gundogan's. If he's playing that role long-term, say De Bruyne gets injured again, I do think he is an option. Okay. So I'm not ruling Bernardo out. It's that position on the pitch that's important to me, not necessarily the player who holds it.
It's like a premium, sexier version of targeting a right winger who plays Norwich, basically. Nice. Or nice. Right back, which could be Antonio next week. He played right back this week.
Oh, goodness, don't, Joe. Don't.
if that match goes ahead. Let's have a look at the next 4 game weeks. So we had a little look at some of those that are facing the tough defences earlier. And this shows the value of West Ham. Now, they're playing Norwich next. Norwich have been absolutely decimated by COVID, by injuries. They are desperate for this match not to take place. But as yet, it is. We don't know. I would say it looks in doubt if some of the other ones have been called off. But anyway, they allegedly play Norwich next, and then they've got Southampton, Watford and Crystal Palace. So whenever this resumes, they've got a great 4 set of fixtures there. Manchester United, the Brighton game is off, so ignore that. Still great though. They've got this could go on. This sea of blue could go on forever. They've got Newcastle, Burnley, Wolves next. It goes on for 5, 6. I think it's another 7 or 8 more games. Just a sea of blue. Everton's fixtures improve. So if Calvert-Lewin can come back, I've got Antonio. Antonio to Calvert-Lewin. A fit and firing Calvert-Lewin with great fixtures against a right back Antonio who can't do anything, well, I mean, that's going to be an easy move, I think. Crystal Palace allegedly got Watford next, then Tottenham, Norwich and West Ham. So, definitely worth sticking with Gallagher. Definitely worth sticking with whatever Palace players that you have. Man City up there, Newcastle, Leicester, Brentford and Arsenal, some good sides. Arsenal could be tricky, but it's Man City. Southampton, a bit of a mixture of fixtures, and then it goes right the way down. Wolves fixtures continue to drop off a cliff. Just Watford there, surrounded by Chelsea, Arsenal, Manchester United. My team Brighton's fixtures pretty bad. So they have also got their own COVID issues. Manchester United are not next, but they have Brentford next. Maybe Neil Maupay can get on the pitch then. Chelsea and Everton also follow. But yeah, just looking at the next 4 fixtures, I mean, it's hard to plan, isn't it? But any particular thoughts looking at the best teams to target going forward?
I mean, at fear of repeating my answer from earlier, obviously, I think you tweeted this earlier. It's kind of a week by week, case by case.
Just look at it every week. Yeah.
Of course, you do need to try and have some sort of medium-term planning because you can't make 11 transfers every week. But in that case, all you're doing is giving yourself the best chance. So, if a match is called off, well, we're all screwed anyway. If matches are on, you just want to have the players who have the best fixtures, obviously, like normal FPL. So you just position yourself to be in the best possible state for then the uncontrollables to do what they do.
Yeah.
And I think actually an interesting way to sort of extend this is even just looking at these next 4. Whatever gets cancelled is eventually going to be played. So there's going to be double game weeks or, game weeks crammed together with pluses put after them, whatever it is. So we've all lost some Man United players, which I think makes sense because they've got 2 blanks now, I believe. And, who knows if they'll have more. But at some point, you might want triple Man United because they're going to have 2 decent doubles. And that goes for Spurs and I forget who else. Is it going to be Leicester maybe?
Was it Brentford and Brighton are the 2? So Manchester United against them coming up.
Dare I say that obviously depends. I'm kind of assuming that we end up with, a 2-week break or even longer now. So I don't know if that's going to happen, but I'm just maybe keeping that idea in my head. I wonder if something sensible here is if that's confirmed or a strong possibility. Remember when it happened 2 seasons ago now, wasn't it? Wildcards and everything aside, before FPL decided they were giving everyone a wildcard, the game weeks kept ticking over and you could make transfers.
Yeah.
I made transfers to both gain value in my team and also we didn't know we were getting a wildcard. No. So to try and just get a better team, a very slow wildcard. We're probably not going to have the same scenario this time because, FPL will announce what they're going to do sooner, you would imagine, because they have that precedence in place. And there's probably fewer weeks between the season stopping and starting again. But you might have an opportunity to gain a little bit of value or effectively make 3 transfers in 1 game week because it's actually 3 game weeks, something like that.
I think it looked, when it was last time, what happened was it for those that can't remember that far back or weren't playing, they as Seb was saying, they stopped, but you could still make transfers each week. So the sort of technical side of the game was carrying on. So in essence, the sort of matches were being played out in their absence. So what many engaged managers were doing they knew what the fixtures were. They just didn't know when they were, and so they could look at, like we're looking at here. It says game week 18, game week 19, but it might not be. It might be game weeks 23, 24. But these fixtures should still be in place. It will just start again here. So you ought to be perhaps looking at thinking, well, if everything is cancelled for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we can look at these and think, well, when it resumes, I hope I've got lots of West Ham, Manchester United, Everton players. We might know some double game weeks as well, and look at the teams that have been postponed and think, oh, that's an opportunity. I mean, David De Gea is a goalkeeper I want for a Manchester United double.
Yeah, I would just because in the chat as well, Charlie says, shall I play my free hit? I don't know about you, Joe, but I would say don't play your free hit. It's really tempting. No. But what you'll be doing is obviously trying to cram in any players that play, and then 2 hours before a match, it could be called off anyway. Yeah. What you want the free hit for is when we end up with that first week back. Yeah. Okay, everyone might get a wild card. So the second week back, when there's a full schedule of doubles or something like that, I think you can get a better gain later on in the season with leaderships now. Exactly. I just used my wild card and I feel like I wasted, not in my control, but I wasted it a bit if we all get a wild card and start again, in game week 19 or whatever. So what you do now, I think, is you hold on to your chips, you hold on to your purchasing power and use it when it's going to be most effective.
That's a great point, because imagine that we get back to double game weeks of some of these top sides, the likes of De Gea, Ronaldo, Son. you haven't got them in your sides. How are you going to get them all in? Well, that free hit, you can really maximise that free hit. That can be a really good. So often we use free hit in a blank game week, and that's in our psyche. But using him in a double game week, just a one-off double game week like that, which is sort of isolated in amongst perhaps some other good fixtures for other teams, fantastic. So I would hold back. And as Seb said, these tests are coming back for these clubs hours before. We saw the Watford Burnley game was cancelled 2 hours before kickoff, and it's 4 hours from London. So so there were people in the Midlands somewhere in a car on a coach, Watford fans just groaning. Oh, awful. But yeah, I would hold it, because you don't know what's going to happen. You could have a brilliant 11 and it could be rubbish. Let's have a look at Alex's team. This is the community team we're running on behalf of a top 100 manager who's done ever so well over the years, and he's taken a break for a season, so we're taking over his side. So we're doing okay this week. We removed Livramento, who got no points, to target. I felt like an Aston Villa defender was a player that not many other people would have, but could be a nice source of points. And I went for target. 6 points.
Defence has improved as well, hasn't it? I think.
Yeah, and their defence has improved. They've improved. Target and cash. I basically flipped a coin. I think that the fullbacks under Steven Gerrard's system are good. I think you're going to get some attacking returns there. So target 6 points, under 5 million, and a good upgrade on Livramento. Green Arrow so far 26 points, and it looks like we may better field a full 11, and we even got a goal from Zaha. So looking good. And I looked at players like Pookie and Zaha before and thought, I might remove them, but now I think, well, if they're actually going to play, these are gold dust. These are 90 minute guys who are integral to their team. So it's difficult to know what to do with this because of COVID. Ronaldo's not playing.
So do you think, there was a question in the chat on this as well, and sorry I missed the name, but because we still have Ronaldo here, at this point, do you lose him? So now let's do the opposite of what we just did a second ago and assume everything is fine as of next weekend. Yeah. Well, Ronaldo is only missing one now. Would at this point you maybe hold him? If everything's going to get called off, it's going to get called off, and you can then solve that problem. But let's say everything goes ahead. I wonder if you've missed the chance to have 2 game weeks without him, get Watkins' points, or spread the funds, and now maybe you should hold. What do you think?
I think in the case of this particular team, I would hold Ronaldo, because who are the alternatives? I think Watkins, but I think arguably last week may have been the time to really maximise that. Ronaldo's a player we're probably going to want back. Those that have moved for a player like Watkins are already 12 points up on the deal. We could be more this weekend. Well, we should be. And so on. So I'd be tempted to leave it, especially because we've got Rafinha, who plays, could get a penalty. Douglas Luiz could get you 3 points, could get you an attacking return, and Mitchell. But so we don't know what teams are going to play. But Ronaldo, I don't think is the issue here. I think if we find out, for example, a particular game is off, we could move Mitchell, for example, to another defender. I mean, I think the basics is there for this one. I think this is quite a flexible team, I think.
Sure. Do we have one free transfer?
Just one free transfer.
Okay.
And not much in the bank. But enough to upgrade or Mitchell if the Palace game is off. Or indeed Pookie we can move.
Yeah. I guess looking back at the fixtures when you had those up, maybe West Ham is the miss. But then are they running out of steam, or are they going to gain steam with fixtures? We're not sure. I wouldn't necessarily go for Antonio right now, but I guess a Bowen. I mean, Zaha's got good enough fixtures, I think. It's only a shame it's not Gallagher, but we'll take second best. I guess the reason I asked for 2 free transfers is like, can we do something fancy like Ronaldo down and bring in KDB? Just something, a little bit different and tasty. But otherwise, I guess
we could do it for a hit. I don't think.
If we're using a hit, we probably need to wait to know for fixtures. So. I'm trying to find things to do, to be honest. Other than thinking about West Ham, I'm probably with you and wait and see. Yeah.
Emu Show in the chat asks what maybe go for target instead of cash. Well, they both had quite similar good stats, but targets were marginally better, and so I just went for him. So it was, I think, nothing but it's back. I think both are great options if you've gone for cash.
Is he cheaper? I swear he might be slightly cheaper.
And he's slightly cheaper.
Oh, well,
so I also went for that, and I wanted to give myself a tiny bit of money just in case we wanted to make a move. So I think we're okay here. So we'll have a look at our own teams, what we're going to be doing. So this is me for Gameweek 18. I'm potentially going to go into this with 4 players. So let's have a look here. I'll just move you up the screen a tiny bit. So I've got Fernandes, who I think is out. James, Alexander-Arnold, Cancelo in a 3-4-3 with Salah, Jota, Bowen, Gallagher, Watkins, Dennis, Antonio. And then on my bench, I've got Tomiyasu. I'm quite happy to play, actually. Livramento, I'm not so happy. And Sissoko, if he plays, is 2 points. So I have no goalkeeper, or not a good goalkeeper. And I don't have a City mid, so I'm tempted to use a hit. I think at the moment, I don't usually like to make hits, but if you're going into the game, if I'm going into a game with like 8 players, I might as well take a hit to address long-term problems. If I already had Ramsdale and I already had Foden and I had I had the rest of this setup here, I'd be tempted not to make a change, because what are you going to change into? I mean, so I think that's what I'll probably do. Sissoko to Foden, Fernandes to Ramsdale. Just play it long term. Don't know who I'd bench though. Antonio out of spite probably.
Are you happy with Ramsdale and Tomiyasu from?
Yeah. Oh, I'm completely fine with doubling up on defences like that. And one of the reasons is because I have highlighted upon my ages a while ago that I didn't have an Arsenal defender, and so I was missing out on those clean sheet points, and also Ramsdale was getting further points as well. Having Tomiyasu was great for that, but then a week like this, where I've got James, Alexander-Arnold, Cancelo, Tomiyasu might miss out. And so I might indeed miss out from any potential Arsenal Ramsdale points. So I don't mind that at all. And I don't mind doubling up, because Arsenal's defence is good, especially at home. So they've got a couple of away games. Tomiyasu on the bench for them. At the home games, hey presto, I'm going to roll double Arsenal defence, I think. But yeah, up in the air. But that's the basic plan. Let's have a look at your team then. So for the benefit of those listening to the podcast, you want to describe who you've got and your captain in Cancelo, I can immediately say.
Yeah, so I've got Edison in goal with Trent, Cancelo and James at the back, and I have the captaincy on Cancelo. Salah vice captain, Jota, Foden, Bowen in the midfield, Antonio, Watkins, King front line. I have Dallo on the bench, so I have no first sub, but I have Gilmore and Williams, who are my 90-minute men, hopefully. And a non-playing goalkeeper, but that was a decision I'm very happy with. Yeah. As with you, I suspect I will lose further players through postponements, but I've kind of not looked yet. I'm going for blissful ignorance until the app tells me itself.
Yeah, the Tottenham Liverpool game you would imagine might be in doubt because of Tottenham's COVID issues, but also is Salah the best captaincy option? And sweet, he's my captain this week. I'm not going to mess around with it. But I do think you are right. Cancelo is possibly got the higher ceiling for this one.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. There's no guarantee it stays there. But just when I think it was on the wildcard a couple of weeks ago when we spoke about which week would you not captain Salah and would you want the alternative, i.e. Ronaldo? This was one of only the very, very few weeks that jumped out to me. Now, obviously, Ronaldo isn't an option for me now anymore. I don't have him and he doesn't have a match. But looking at it, Newcastle have improved a little bit attacking under Howe, but not enough really to probably overcome the best defence in the league, which is City. And then City themselves going forward are very, very good. And Cancelo has every chance of being involved in that. If you look at where Newcastle, you mentioned this earlier, right? We look at where Newcastle are weak. If Cancelo plays in that sort of playmaking left-back role, it's exactly where he could do damage. Like I say, I may well lose the cojones for this and go for Salah. But I think if there's an opportunity there to take, I think this is one. And if you had like a Foden as well and you wanted to captain him, I think that's valid. The reason I've got Cancelo is I fancy him to get attacking returns and defensive returns in this fixture. Yeah,
definitely. I'd say looking strong, but you could end up with 2 players.
Exactly. I'm happy just to remain ignorant of that for now and solve it as it comes up.
So,
the one thing to keep in mind, just while you mention that, is players on yellow cards. So we do have, I don't have the full list in front of me, but significant players are Matty Cash, Reece James, Rafinha.
Oh, that's another reason I didn't get Matty Cash in. I got Target. Sorry.
Nice.
That was another reason,
Yeah, so one to keep an eye on just when you're making your transfers. Realistically, it might not matter as much as COVID now. But someone on 4 yellow cards, I believe it's before game week 19. If they get another yellow, they will sit out with a suspension, which is what Cancelo's just done.
Yeah.
And someone like Reece James, he's on 4. He is known for getting a few yellows, especially in the fixtures that are a bit tougher when he's defending. So one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, definitely. So thanks so much for those that are joining us. Thanks for listening, wherever you are, listening to this or watching back again. Hope we've given you some food for thought there. We are, as best we can, trying to prepare ourselves and you for Game Week 18. It may not happen, and it may happen in limited form. But hopefully, whenever it returns, we're going for every eventuality, a break, postponements, no postponements. So we're, hopefully we've got you prepared down the line somewhere.
Joe, one last question for you from Nuclear Atoms in the chat, who says he really wants to know what's more beneficial: one free transfer on a high ceiling mid and have no goalkeeper to use, or use it on a goalkeeper?
I would say if it's just one free transfer, I would just play stick goalie, just go with 10 outfield players because of just the ceiling. I'm in a similar position. I've only got one free transfer, and those are the two issues. I'm just going to take a hit and go for both, I think. So if you can take it, I think it's worth a hit there. And don't think of the hit for the goalkeeper, think of the hit for the midfielder who could get you 12 points or whatever. So, but yeah, I would definitely prioritise getting the high ceiling player.
Nice.
Yeah.
The one thing I would add, and I think you mentioned this earlier, is where possible, not as a rule, but just where possible, don't take out someone who's likely to play just to upgrade. In this kind of scenario, you want to be taking out non-playing players if you can.
Yeah. Or players that you don't think are, like Livramento, for example. I think he's averaging 0 points or 1 point.
That's fair. Yeah.
Those types of players, and I thought Saints fans thought he was going to have a break, to be honest. And I was quite surprised to see him in the starting 11. So, but yeah, on the whole, if they're going to play, yeah. So yeah, if you've got Chris Wood, definitely play Chris Wood because he's the one. But in the meantime, Seb, thanks so much for joining me. It's a goodbye from me and a goodbye from you, I presume, as well.
Thank you very much. And yes, indeed, goodbye from me.